Buenas noches, días. 7, 8. Me llamo Kevin y tú. ¿Dónde Esteba? ¿Cómo 7, 6?
Welcome everybody to our hotel room. We're in Boston, as you guys know, if you've been watching the past few weeks. And, me and you didn't have the most exciting time watching UFC 306 Noche UFC at the Sphere because, we were just sitting in the hotel room watching it. But still, it was fun. I enjoyed the card. But I think the first thing we got to talk about, because this was the huge story coming in, all the hype behind the Sphere. My thoughts personally is the people who are complaining about how it looked on TV have to realize that this wasn't made for them. The UFC did the best they could with making the TV angles work, with the cameras and stuff. But, that event being there, it seemed like that was pretty awesome. That's just my 2 cents. But what did you think of the Sphere?
I guess that's part of why there's so much talk about it being the first time and maybe the only time that they'll do a Sphere event.
Rogan's hoping they go back. He said that 900 times. I don't know if you caught that.
Because I think it's pretty clear that they clearly really did try to put an emphasis on the production side of it, and probably spent a lot more than they usually do and stuff. There was cinematics and all that to go with it, and they were talking about how an Emmy should be in the works for how they went about it, and just the cinematic Mexican fighting and all of that.
Those were cool. I will give them that. It was definitely way different than what we're used to seeing. But the thing with me, and again, I'm not trying to knock them for it, because on the one hand, this has never been done before. It's the first sporting event that's ever been held in the Sphere. So, there's no blueprint for the UFC to follow when it comes to, the camera angles and stuff like that. And some of them were, they were a little bit weird looking and kind of hard to watch. But at the same time, I can't knock them for it because they're literally doing something that's never been done before. And because of that, I just think that they deserve more credit than they do, crap from people. Because I know, how MMA fans are, man. On Instagram, Twitter, all the same. They complain about everything. They're never satisfied because the UFC hyped this up big time. I get it. But, again, I stress this was not as much for the people watching at home. It's more for the people who were in the arena that night. And I feel being in the arena for that must have been insane. But to move to the main event, obviously, because if you want to add anything else,
for everyone at home anyways, wouldn't it just be the card itself that people are if they have an issue with it, and that's really what they're taking up with?
Well, people bitched and moaned about that too. I don't know if you've caught that on Twitter, but I don't understand that. I thought it was I know name value wise, besides the main few fights, it wasn't so crazy, but all the fights were so well matched that they were all bangers. They were all really good fights, as we're going to get to a few of them that were under the radar coming in and ended up being some of the best fights of the night. It's almost like a pay-per-view version of what we say some of those Apex cards are they may not be huge name value wise, but sometimes the matchups are so good that those cards end up being sleepers. And I thought this one was a really good card, honestly, from start to finish. I know we didn't get to watch the whole thing, but we did watch a decent amount of it. And obviously saw the whole main card. And unless you got something else real quick about the Sphere, I'm ready to hop into the main event.
Nah, nothing about the Sphere anymore.
Yeah, so obviously main event, Dvalishvili defeats Sean O'Malley via unanimous decision, 49-46 scorecard and 2 48-47s. And when I say that out loud, I feel that's just where we need to start, because I don't know how two of those judges had that 48-47. 49-46 I could kind of understand because of the fifth round, but even then, it's I thought that was a pretty dominant showing from Merab. I mean, his pace, everything that we're used to seeing with Merab happened in this fight. I mean, his pace was overwhelming to O'Malley. The wrestling looked really good. O'Malley really couldn't stop the takedowns that much. He was doing a decent job at getting back up, but when you can't really do much on the feet because you're so worried about the takedown, that's a big issue. And it seemed like after round 2, O'Malley was really just discouraged. And you can't read what's going on in a guy's head sometimes, obviously, but it really just looked like he didn't really want to be in there from round 3 on, and especially going into round 5. I mean, Tim Welch saying to him, this is almost over. That's a bad. I don't know. That's a rough place to be because that wasn't the most motivational speech going into the 5th round of a championship fight that you're about to lose. You know what I mean? But I was really impressed with Merab's performance, and obviously we have a new bantamweight champ.
What that really is a guy knowing what his opponent's game plan is, but still just being overwhelmed and outmatched by it.
Yeah, I thought Dana actually had a good perspective on it. Like he said, Sean just looked flat. He wasn't really landing in the way that he usually does, and I do think some of that was from the hesitation because, when he was overextending, he was getting taken down pretty easily. And I give Merab credit for that. That was the one problem I had, and we were talking about this when we were watching. The commentary, they talk about how Aljo cut so much weight to get to 35, and that must be why Sean O'Malley beat him. But when Aljo fought Sean O'Malley, they weren't saying that. So I just don't like how they take away from the guy who's losing because they want to make a point. No. Sean O'Malley is a really good fighter, and that's why he beat Aljamain Sterling, who's another really good fighter. And Merab is a really good fighter. You don't have to, degrade one win to hype up another. That's just how I feel.
But the thing is that when you're on commentary and you're speaking to an audience and all that, pretty much, I think what it really is you try to keep things as less surface level as possible. Because they want to get people talking, they want to get the hashtag and stuff out there and all that. Just just make the pay-per-view just the most trending topic and
I have a conspiracy theory related to that now because I was going to bring this up later, but since you kind of got me into the point, I have a theory that the UFC calling Terrence Crawford Kendrick Lamar was on purpose. I think that they did that to get it's just a thought. I have no proof. It's just total speculation because obviously Kendrick Lamar, pretty big name this year and right now. I could see them doing that on purpose just to kind of get the clicks and a little viral thing to get maybe casuals more into it. That's just a thought.
According to Dana White, Terrence Crawford looked like Kendrick Lamar in that moment.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I don't know about that
I'm being honest. That was a rough one, but yeah.
Back
to your commentary point.
That's actually really funny. Dude.
Yeah, I was thinking about that after the card ended when I was just laying here. I'm like, because I saw it everywhere, ESPN MMA fighting, all these different accounts were posting about it, and I was like, I wonder if they did that on purpose just to get a story out there, maybe to get some people who wouldn't normally watch to watch, because you already get a lot of casual fans with Sean O'Malley on the card, but Kendrick Lamar obviously very big right now. You never know about things like that. I mean, you hear about industry plants and stuff like that all the time. Remember last year with the NFL when they had that lady, I think she was a Chargers fan or Vikings fan, one of the two.
Yeah. And
she was just going overly crazy, and then she got they exposed her on social media. But yeah, I mean, back to the main event though. I see what you're saying with the commentary, and plus, I mean, it is tough to commentate sometimes, especially a fight like that too, where Merab was landing a lot of ground and pound and stuff, but there wasn't really a lot of position advancement and stuff to break down technically, so they kind of have to talk about other things. But Merab looked absolutely incredible in there, and that's kind of what I mean though. I wish that they wouldn't say the stuff about Sean O'Malley and Aljo's fight being because of the way that went because of the weight cut, because then it's I know they're not doing it on purpose, but they're taking away from Merab because you're saying that O'Malley technically wasn't as good because of this circumstance with Aljo, when meanwhile it's really impressive that he beat Aljo and then Chito the way that he did, and then Merab ran through Sugar Sean. I mean, we've never seen Sean O'Malley lose a fight like that. The only fight that he lost before that was the first Chito Vera fight, and you know, if you've seen that fight, that was a leg kick to the peroneal nerve, like one of the most just precise shots that you could get. And I don't want to call it a fluke because it's like a shot that he threw and with that intent.
Well,
but
now he can't put up the 0 when Bruce Buffer's
Yeah.
reading out his record.
yeah, he was saying that too. Did you see the video of him after the fight, Sugar Sean? He's wearing the singlet, doing sprawls and stuff in the hotel room, back to work. I was like, that was pretty funny. But Merab, like, because, you know, sometimes in these types of fights you find yourself talking about the guy who lost more than the guy who won, and like Sean O'Malley, obviously it's crazy that he lost that way.
Talk about the guy who won. So people were already had gripes and stuff about Bilal Muhammad, one wrestler winning the championship, and now another wrestler, Merab, winning the bantamweight title. And I think hopefully it's in a good way, but it's like a changing of the times where just these more grappling type guys that are just they'll go all 5 rounds no problem. Like, sure, we do all want to see you finish. Like, that's what everyone should go in there for. But I mean, these guys don't get tired at all, really. Like,
well, Merab's pace that's like his biggest strength. It's crazy how he overwhelms people. I mean, I'm still impressed by what he did to Henry Cejudo when he fought him. The guy is just insane. You could argue that I heard Matt Serra talking about this on Joe Rogan. Like, you could argue he's never really lost a fight in the UFC because he got submitted by Ricky Simone way back when. But the way it happened was pretty controversial because it was at the end of the round, and he just looked like he was exhausted, but they thought he was out, so they stopped the fight. And, you know, it is what it is. It's a loss on his record. And then the other one was a loss to Frankie Saenz, which that was a questionable decision, if I'm being honest. So it's interesting to see what Merab has done in the UFC.
The same could be what I was saying could be said for Islam Makhachev too. I honestly, I think, it's obviously not the most flashy, but I mean it's hard to take away from what they're still able to do with the opponent across from them. Like, you're able to neutralize someone like Sean O'Malley, who does have that one punch power and does put together striking the way he does, as accurately as he does, and like Dana White said, he just wasn't landing the way we're used to doing. Then, there's a guy. It's obviously a testament to the guy across from him. So, I
was
think
really impressed
some fans should probably just think more to themselves. Like, oh well, maybe I was a little too high on Sean O'Malley for this given fight, because that's kind of what it seemed like. I didn't see that many people giving Merab a chance.
Yeah, I mean, even coming in, I kind of thought that O'Malley was going to be able to land a lot of shots on him and stuff. But one thing that I didn't really expect that Merab did, his movement looked insane. I mean, he was bouncing around the cage, never standing in one spot for more. He wasn't like, because a lot of times he just comes forward just like a Terminator almost. And in this fight, he was bouncing around the outside, switching directions constantly, not moving like front to back, but moving side to side. And the thing that I liked with that too is when he was doing that, he was like flailing his arms kind of like this. And even though he's smaller than O'Malley, that helped him create more range, which was like really impressive in my opinion, because that was why I kind of thought he was going to get hit a lot, because just the range difference is a big thing. But the way that Merab was able to kind of like extend his own boundaries there, like I thought that was really impressive. And I think that Sean O'Malley, I don't know if he wasn't expecting it or if he just wasn't prepared to counter that. But, yeah, I mean, he just was not landing like we're used to seeing him land. I mean, when you watch that Chito Vera fight, that's kind of almost what I envisioned happening here with Merab, just in a different way. Like, just because if you watch Merab's past fights, he moves forward in a similar way, but this one, his movement was way different, and I think that honestly made a huge difference on the feet. And then obviously when he was taking Sean down over and over, that does a lot to your confidence, and obviously Sean was a lot more hesitant as the fight went on. And like I said, it just seemed like he didn't really want to be there at the end of it. But Merab is the champ, and Joe Rogan asked him about Umar Nurmagomedov right away, which I didn't really like, if I'm being honest. Like, this guy just won the belt. He's going to get asked about that in the post-fight press conference anyway. Like, I would have just let him have his moment. And some people were mad that Merab didn't even really answer the question, but I'm like, nah, he just won he just literally just won the title. The culmination of all those years of work. Like, no, don't ask me about this other contender. I just won the belt. I'm the champ. Like, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I didn't really love that, but, Merab handled it pretty well, and I think that we're going to get Merab versus Umar next. I don't see any other matchup that makes sense. Some people were talking about Figueiredo, but I think everybody's in agreement that Figueiredo should be after Umar at this point, because that win that Umar got over Sandhagen was so impressive. And then for O'Malley, you wonder like what he's going to do next, because he's a guy who's talked in the past about not wanting to take too much damage throughout his whole career. And like the second he starts losing fights and getting hit more is when he wants to walk away. And he's a guy who could do that, obviously. He's built his brand so well. He makes a ton of money. But I don't see him walking away after something like this. I feel like there's still fights for him at bantamweight. He could still obviously move up to featherweight at some point. I mean, the fights that I'm thinking about right now for Sean O'Malley, you got maybe a Petr Yan rematch. You could do Corey Sandhagen, which was... you know me, man. That's a fight that I think if like there were 5 fights that if you had like gun to my head, what fights would you need to see? I think O'Malley versus Sandhagen might be my personal number 1, just because the stylistic matchup there is so interesting to me. I think that would be a chess match on the feet, and then I feel like Corey can mix it up a little bit against Sugar Sean. Who knows? But that's kind of how I feel. I don't know if you have any other like opinions with either of those guys, but.
No, well, here's the thing, right? Like, and this is also part of, I feel like, why. Here's the other thing too. Is like, I guess like we were saying before, talking about the fight. Like technically, there wasn't that much to break down, other than Merab just outpacing and just being stronger than Sean O'Malley. But I guess like part of why Joe Rogan would feel like he has to ask Merab right away about Umar's, because like I guess now there is just that many fights out there for Merab, or actually because we know Umar Nurmagomedov is the clear number 1 contender. When I was trying to say just now was now it really seems like there are a lot more fights out there for a guy like Sean O'Malley, and like with Merab, like we know what's next already. So now it's about like when is that fight gonna happen, pretty much.
Yeah.
And how much would that really matter too? So.
You're talking about Merab versus Umar?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be 2025. I doubt that they'll put that in like December or anything like that. So it should be interesting. I mean, I'm intrigued to see what happens in that fight. 2 guys with honestly pretty similar styles. Except I would say Umar is a little more technical on the feet, but Merab is definitely more in your face. So, I think it'll probably be early 2025 if I had to guess. I feel like Merab will want to stay active as champ, get those championship paydays, you know what I mean? But to move on to the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko wins the flyweight title, finally avenges that first loss against Alexa Grasso. You could argue that maybe she avenged it in their second fight, but obviously it was a draw in the record books. But now Valentina Shevchenko, I think it was all 50-45s as well across the board, as it should have been. It was a pretty dominant showing from Valentina, who really just proves that she's, again, one of the greatest female fighters that we've ever seen. And Alexa Grasso really just had nothing for Valentina when it comes to what was going on the ground. I mean, she was scrambling and trying to get some submissions off her back. There was an armbar that was kind of in at, I think it was like the second round, maybe the third round. But outside of that, it didn't really seem like Alexa Grasso had much for Valentina, and it's crazy. Like, Valentina's already ran through the flyweight division, but she's been like a non-champion now for a decent amount of time, and now there's like more contenders coming up. So like Valentina could technically run through a whole new generation of new flyweight contenders if she chooses to, or if she can, I should say. But
well,
yeah.
here's the thing, right? That someone like Alexa Grasso, she's someone that likes to, keep the range short and all that. And so, for instance, when Valentina's in her guard and she's just kind of off her back trying to get submission holds that way, it's kind of just more pressure on Alexa Grasso to be able to actually lock in the hold and try to get Valentina to tap, because if not, then Valentina can just pretty much just stay on her the entire way through, and that's kind of how it went. Like, I didn't really, except for probably there was probably one guillotine attempt that looked like it was close to being locked in, but I mean, I wasn't really like sweating anything with Valentina in terms of her being in a submission hold. Like, it didn't seem like Alexa Grasso had that great of a grip, and you know how tough Valentina is already, and even in her own right, how technical she is on the ground. So, I mean, that's kind of just at this point in time, like, Valentina Shevchenko's better fighter, pretty much, honestly. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely fair to say. I mean, Valentina, you could argue that she is one of the top two, maybe even the greatest female fighter. I would obviously put her under Amanda Nunes just because they fought and Amanda won twice, but Valentina is definitely on that Mount Rushmore of the greatest female fighters of all time, and it's just doing things like this. Like, that's the type of stuff that turns you into a legend. And I understand that the fight wasn't that entertaining, but when you look at it from a straight achievement standpoint, I mean, I think she's in her mid-30s at this point too. Like, she's not young. So the fact that she's doing this and like even after a loss, like, you don't see a lot of people in MMA really get back to another title shot and win in the way that she was able to. And I know that the second fight went the way that it did, so they kind of had to give her a third one. But it was impressive. Like, I thought it was going to be a lot closer even if she did win, and she just honestly made it look easy, and I was really impressed by her. And now I think Valentina versus Manon Fior is the fight to make, clearly. I don't know if you agree or not, but
yeah, I really agree with it. I think I feel like Manon Fior could honestly give her a bit of a run for her money than some people might expect, but at the same time, I also feel like Valentina could end it super quickly.
Yeah, I think on the feet that fight is really interesting. It's on the ground where I think Valentina might have a bigger advantage, but I mean, who knows, man? That's the good thing about MMA. Like, we're always thinking about what's next, and sometimes we gotta focus on just how good a performance was, but the fact that we can look forward and see all these different things that could possibly happen, it's what makes this sport so fun. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the NBA or something where you see like a good team play a bad team and you know what's gonna happen pretty much, unless a fluke occurs. But in MMA, you really can never fully predict anything, because who knows? Injuries happen in camp, in fights. So we'll see what's going on in the future with that division, because it seems like it's in a really good spot right now, honestly. But to move on to another division that's in a fun spot, featherweight, we had a great fight that should have obviously happened a few months ago, but ended up happening on this past card in the Sphere. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes impresses once again, continues to rise in the featherweight division, and I think he's really, really close to a title shot now after beating Brian Ortega as easily as he did by unanimous decision. And is this really, like, kind of like the main event, Diego Lopes really looked similar to how he's looked in his past few wins. Just really fun boxing. I mean, he has so much power. Have you noticed, like, he may not be the most technically sound, but man, when he cracks somebody, it hurts them. And Brian Ortega's tough, too. And he was really putting it on him when it comes to being on the feet. And even on the ground, like, the exchanges that we had were pretty fun. And Lopes did a good job at staying on top and really managing, like, that weight to keep Ortega on his back and unable to scramble. And he was landing some really good ground and pound.
That's the thing. It didn't even feel like there really was much to go on the ground. And then when there was, it was pretty much Diego Lopes, like, well in control.
Yeah,
so.
Which is so impressive because Ortega has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the sport, honestly. And I know sometimes he doesn't show it just because he's also really good on the feet, so sometimes he doesn't need to show it. But the fact that Diego Lopes was able to kind of hang with him down there was really impressive. And then the fact that he was able to pretty much dominate the fight on the feet in the way that he did was really something else, because that was something I didn't expect as much. I figured it was going to be way closer. I mean, I was super excited for this fight the last time it was booked. Even more excited this time after what Diego did last time with Dan Ige. It was, and Brian Ortega is one of those guys too who even when he gets clipped, it's hard to count him out because he's so tough and he's a durable guy who has a ton of heart and he's always going to come back. But in this fight, he may not have gotten finished, but it was pretty clear that he had nothing for Diego Lopes, and that's just super impressive to me. I mean, Diego is going to be in the top 5 now. I mean, you know, we got Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway on the next pay-per-view, but after that, I don't really know who else would get a title shot. I mean, Volkanovski, I guess you could always slide back in there, and I don't think people would complain, but you could argue that Diego Lopes is the new number 1 contender after this next fight. It was a big win.
Is it? But would you consider it in a way too soon, like a fast track kind of thing? Because, I mean, it's not like he had the easiest start to his UFC career, and now he's racked up these wins over legit names, and where I guess depending on where he would be in the rankings is just I guess if there really if the division is that devoid of contenders left, then you gotta give him a shot. But it'd also be disappointing at the same time if they gave him a shot and he kind of just got
like steamrolled.
Not steamrolled and just like kind of just that's just how I feel. Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway, I think, are still significantly better than Diego Lopes at this time. So, I mean,
I could see also, because we have the fight with Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling coming up. Some people were saying that maybe the winner of that fight could fight Diego Lopes, and maybe that'll be a title eliminator. And I'm not opposed to that. It's more so, honestly, if Aljo wins, where I kind of don't want to see it, because I think Aljo's done so much in the sport that if he wins against Evloev, I think you could argue he should get a title shot, because he's just done so much. He's on that championship level. But if Movsar wins, I mean, that's a fun rematch, him and Diego Lopes. Imagine that fight. I mean, that was a great fight the first time around, and Diego took it on like very short notice from what I remember. So
I think Evloev is in a good spot too.
Yeah.
Beat Aljamain Sterling.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you beat a former champion. It's not like he's a former champion from way back when, literally last year. So I could definitely see it. Featherweight, like flyweight, is in a really fun spot right now. There's a lot of people at the top of the division who are, you could argue, could fight for the belt. And, some divisions it's a little more clearer than others, but featherweight, there's definitely multiple options. So I see your point. I definitely kind of agree too. I'm just saying, if they gave Diego a title shot, depending on what happens in that Aljo Evloev fight, I think I wouldn't be that mad at it. But at the same time, I do kind of agree with you. I'd like to see him have one more fight and one more big win, and then it'd be interesting. But Brian Ortega, man, that's a big name on the resume for sure. And I think that if they decided to do it, it wouldn't be the craziest thing we've ever seen. I mean, Dan Henderson got a title shot against Michael Bisping at UFC 204 and back then, and that was crazy. So Cheeto Vera even against Sean O'Malley. So it's not like we've seen things like this happen before. That's kind of like what I'm trying to say. But overall, that was a really impressive performance by Diego Lopes. I enjoyed watching that one, honestly. I mean, Ortega was busted up at the end of that fight, too. So, shout out to Diego and his awesome haircut, I gotta say. But to move on to what was, I think, clearly the fight of the night, arguably fight of the year, Esteban Ribovics versus Daniel Zellhuber. That was just, I mean, there's not much we could talk about in terms of what it does for that division, but man, can we talk about how good of a fight that was, because those dudes were slugging it out all 3 rounds, and I liked that it was such a close fight too, even on the scorecards. You know, it was a split decision that Ribovics won by 229-28 for him, and then 129-28 for Zellhuber, and I thought that the 29-28 for Esteban was pretty fair. That's kind of how I had it. I think that's how you had it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'll say this, since we can't really talk about what is in the future for those guys as much, what was going through your mind when you were watching that fight in the moment?
It was just like, yeah, this is the like the total embodiment of what it's like to be a pro mixed martial artist. I feel like, you know, so that it's like fights like those that you know, people will watch and like either wanna dare to start an MMA journey, or just, you know, get that added motivation and inspiration to like really just go hard each day that you train, even in sparring and stuff, because I mean it really does like translate it translates like it did in this fight to the octagon in an actual fight. So I mean, these guys were just trading the entire time, like, and they not only were they trading, but they were landing hard the entire fight, and just
it's just so crazy. It's been a minute since we've seen like a really crazy war like that, and like on this card too, like the perfect place to have it in the Sphere, all that hype, and then that's like you mentioned it last night when we were watching it. To have that on the main card was such a good thing, because talk about a reason to like buy a pay-per-view. Those are the types of fights that you want to see as an MMA fan, and like you just said too, I think it's definitely inspiring the next generation for sure, and who knows what we're gonna see, man, in like 10 years time, because we were talking to Joe Cav from Combat FC last week, and we were talking about the evolution just from like the beginning of the sport to now. Imagine what it's gonna look like in like 2034. Who knows at this point?
Well,
it's crazy.
You know, I think especially in that 3rd round, Ribovics like really had Zellhuber just reeling up. Like Zellhuber was just wobbly. He was losing his balance and all that. You would think like, you know, oh well, like a casual fan watching would probably be like, that's it, you know, call it and all that. But I mean, Ribovics just, that's the thing. Like you can't kind of, I guess how we were talking about Sean O'Malley in the main event, like you can't get discouraged pretty much. Like you gotta keep your foot on the gas pedal, you know, maintain the cardio and just keep landing and just you gotta just suffocate your opponent as much as possible. So
yeah, I mean, I was impressed. There were times in that fight where you could say that, like, as you talk about getting discouraged,
and it's not like Zellhuber wasn't fighting back here. He was still fighting back despite all that damage he was taking in that last round. So
yeah, and even before that though, like he was doing pretty well at times from range, and like you mentioned before with getting discouraged, like it's good that Esteban wasn't like, oh my god, like I can't break this guy's range. He just kept pressuring him, kept his foot on the gas pedal, and landed some huge punches. And obviously in the 3rd round, that's when he really landed some big ones. But like just that whole fight, I mean, both of those guys, it was so impressive. They both had their moments in like those are the types of fights those are the fights why me and you are like fans of the UFC and MMA in general. Like you want to see that type of stuff. That type of fight was the fight for the Just Bleed fans, you know what I mean? And even the fight before that kind of was with Ronaldo Rodriguez and O'Day Osbourne. I mean, O'Day Osbourne drops Ronaldo Rodriguez in the first like 20, 30 seconds of the fight, and you thought that fight was over because he clipped him so bad, and he looked like he was out, dude. And that might have been one of those situations where, like, you knock a guy out and then you punch him again, and that kind of wakes him up a little bit. Because the other thing, too, I can't remember who the ref was, but I'm glad that he didn't stop the fight because he almost did. But
Tyone.
Was Tyone? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, because he kind of stepped in there, but then he saw Rodriguez kind of, like, scrambling a tiny bit off his back, and then he stepped away. And good thing he stepped away because that fight was far from over, clearly. Because Rodriguez, from that point on, pretty much, when he was able to reverse him and get on top, that was pretty much how the whole fight went from there on out. And you wonder if Ode kind of gassed himself out trying to finish the fight in the first round. But I don't think he was completely exhausted. I do just think Rodriguez was doing really well as the fight went on. And, you know, he survived a crazy moment. And to get a comeback win like that has to be so crazy because, you know, you get knocked down, almost knocked out in the first round. But even at the end of the first round, he was on top and doing damage. And then the next two rounds weren't even really close. So I was super impressed by that performance by Rodriguez, and another great fight that I'm glad was on the main card. But like even the prelims, dude, there were so many good performances on there. I mean, that cut that Irene Aldana had on her head was one of the most gnarly things I've seen in UFC history. So like shout out to Norma Dumont. She did great. She's a rising contender too at 135 at this point if she can continue to make the weight, because she has had problems with that in the past. But besides that, like Ignacio Bahamondes, like I'm glad more people are starting to see how great of a striker that dude is. I mean, Bilal Muhammad is always talking about that guy. So that's high praise. When the welterweight champ is talking about getting hard rounds and sparring with that dude, that's some high praise. And I was impressed by his knockout. And then, you know, Raul Rosas Jr., the first person to ever win a fight in the Sphere. So respect to him. 19 years old. He could still improve quite a bit, but I don't hold it too much against him just because he's so young and he has so much time to do that. I know he wants to retire by the time he's 25. We'll see what happens in that case, but hey, man, at 19 to be doing that well so far in the UFC, shout out to him, man. And that was a pretty good performance. He said he wants a top 15 guy next. I don't know if I really want to see that. I think you could argue for it for sure, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to see them fast-track him because you see that happen sometimes with people and it ruins their careers. And he's, like I said, he's such a young guy. Why bother? You know what I mean? Just like keep building him up and let him get a bigger following each fight, and the time will come. Like, you know what I mean? He's improved every fight. So it's not like we're not seeing any difference, especially on the feet. Because like we already know he's good on the ground, but on the feet he's starting to get more crisp. And I think maybe with a couple more fights, then he might be ready to take on that, you know, upper echelon, maybe at bantamweight. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on the card, but I'll say this. Wow. For what they hyped it up as, I would say fight-wise, definitely lived up to the hype. Production-wise, I think it was tough just because, like I said, they've never done it before. So when we're watching on TV, maybe it wasn't as spectacular as it looked in person. But all in all, I'd say that was a success. And I know MMA fans want to shit on everything, but I was pretty happy with how it turned out.
We're talking about injuries that happen pre-fight and stuff, training camp and all that. So I'm going to give Raul Rosas, like, I guess, not even really, it's not even the benefit of the doubt because he won, but, like, just like, lay off him a little bit in terms of how he looked on the feet and getting better as a striker, because I still don't see it personally. I still think he's just a super, he just moves around a lot as a grappler, and he's able to he really can finish anybody from anywhere on the ground. But he also, I think, had a injury
I think
to his
like
fight, and
sprained
they were
ankle
talking about how he thought he was gonna pull out, so that's always just like kind of crazy to me because it is such a common thing, but like you don't hear about it till afterwards. I just wonder how I just wonder how some of these fighters, even like Brian Ortega, for instance, because he fought in this card. His last fight, he literally, he beat Yair Rodriguez, and he like twisted his ankle right before the fight. It's just like crazy how some of these guys are, just able to like subside that injury, like, and we don't even know it we don't even realize it as fans sometimes when they're in there fighting, and they're still able to get the job done and win. Like,
it's that fighting spirit, man. I mean, MMA fighters are tougher than any athlete in any sport. I'm always willing to argue that point. I don't care about football fans talking about what's going on there. Maybe wrestling, but that's a martial art. So I mean, I'm kind of like lumping it all in one category. So MMA fighters, they're tough. They're tough people. They're crazy too, some of them. So overall, I thought this card was really fun. I think it embodied the spirit that they were trying to bring out with Noche UFC, with that like Mexican heritage and that fighting spirit. I really think they picked the perfect fights for that card to turn out the way that it did. Overall production value was really impressive. They spent a lot of money on it, and who knows if we'll ever be going back there again. But if we don't, I'd say that was a pretty fun one. And we have no UFC now, I think, until UFC Paris in another couple weeks. So that'll be it. Obviously, the Canelo fight happened too. He won, but that was an afterthought compared to Noche UFC, which I think proves the point that we were saying a couple weeks ago about how dumb of a business move that was, to not only have them fighting on the same night, but in the same city. Just ridiculous. I don't really have much to say about that one, honestly, but to end it on a positive.
How about how Turk Al-Sheikh and Terrence Crawford were at the Sphere?
Yeah, Roy Jones Jr. too. Like, a lot of boxers were there. So even
Canelo
Oscar De La Hoya, man.
Yeah, they all went there, and so I don't know why. Whoever thought that was a good idea, but
yeah, not the smartest thing overall, but Canelo made his money, I'm sure, so I'm sure he's fine with it, and he got a nice win, so hats off to him too. But overall, a fun weekend in combat sports, and this will be coming out, obviously, we're recording this on Sunday, it'll be out same day, so tomorrow, be on the lookout for the roadcast. And on Tuesday, be on the lookout for our Boston vlog, which is going to be so fun. We've already had a crazy weekend. We'll talk about that a little more on the roadcast, obviously, and you guys will see a lot of the footage that we got on the vlog, which will come out on Tuesday. So, stay tuned for the fun content we got coming out this week, because you guys are probably going to enjoy it a lot. I have a good feeling about it. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all.
Feel just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, brand new dash up in a foreign car. This the type of shit that you be doing when you going hard.